This is Khatt Chronicles, design stories from the Arab world. My name is Yara Khoury Nammour, and I have with me today Lebanese graphic designer Maya Saikali. She is the co-founder and the creative director of Kite Creative, a branding consultancy based in Montreal and Beirut. Across a span of 15 years, Maya has conceived and managed a host of projects, initiatives, and campaigns across diverse sectors and industries. As a strategic planner, art director, and manager, Maya has nurtured sustainable work processes and environments through solution driven collaborative approaches. She is also a design educator that explores at the heart of her pedagogy notions of context, culture, and fast evolving media landscapes. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you.
I think the first time we ever met in person was at Beirut Design Week. Do you still remember what year it was?
2016? No.
I think earlier a bit. I can't remember.
Earlier.
I was like trying to remember which year it was.
Yes, it was around 2015, 16, I guess. Yes,
Yeah.
around this time I think we participated twice. It was a packaging presentation, right?
Yeah, I think I remember the presentation very well. I had heard about your work and you as a designer, and I really wanted to meet you and see the work that you're doing. It was a chocolate brand, I think, right?
It was, I think, many brands. What we did, if I remember well, that year was we prepared an exhibition showcasing all the packaging design we had done, because usually we at Kite were known for our branding projects, but we work a lot on packaging lines, and these are always are never presented. I mean, you see them in supermarkets and sometimes and so on, but they're never presented as a full series. And that time we decided to work on an exhibition that has to do, and a presentation that would go through the processes of developing extensive packaging lines.
Yeah, I remember that pretty well. I'll start with my first question. Can you tell us about your journey as a designer?
So I studied graphic design at AUB. I went in 99 and graduated in 2003. So this is how it all started. So at the core of the department where we also later met. And then, following my graduation from AUB, I practiced as a designer for a few years, trying to figure out what area of specialization I was mostly interested in. And I ended up doing a master's 3 years later in the Design Academy in Eindhoven, and I specialized in social design, social humanitarian environmental design. So design for that would actually allow to advocate for social causes, humanitarian causes. And after spending 2 years at the Design Academy, I went on to practice in the world. So I had few experiences after that in Qatar. Then I went back to Beirut to launch Kite.
And how has your MA studies informed your career? I mean, social. Uh,
Yes.
can you elaborate?
So eventually, this was an interest of mine ever since I was doing my undergrad studies. So I was very much interested in design as a tool for raising awareness, designed to change the world. So I was really influenced by faculty members who were very much driven into this engaged process in design. And so following that, this is why I pursued these, even though I was very much lost between would I go into type design or would I go into animation, or would I really follow or this actual pursuit of what I really liked about design. So when I did the masters, I really met a lot of people from different backgrounds, and we worked on many initiatives together. And I wanted to go and reinvest this work within the regional landscape, so particularly in Lebanon, where I think we could do a lot with this. But eventually, I also had to make a living, and this is also it's a kind of I would say difficult to actually do that, and as well be able to sustain a practice or to sustain personally. So what I did is that at first I really used the tools that I had acquired, or this personal passion of mine, to try to induce it into everything that I was doing, until it became kind of a system where I used to really work on commercial projects, and whenever I could afford, I would actually be engaged in projects where it would serve a purpose, or projects that really mattered. So let's say every summer at Kite, we used to really work with only NGOs, because summer is a calmer period, so we don't have a big rush of projects. So we would every year work with one or two NGOs and offer them our services to work on promoting their causes, or working on whatever needs they might have. At other instances, I also was able to be involved in I would say institutions who were actually working towards social awareness and so on. And it came to a point where in 2016 I was involved with a big group of designers in the campaign of Beirut Madinati, so which was running for an alternative municipal council for the city of Beirut. And this project got a lot of recognition. I had a chance to work with wonderful designers where we co-creatively directed and worked on a process of grassroots communication. And following that, then I was approached by even further more NGOs or institutions working on advocacy. So like now I work, as an example, yes, like the Beirut Urban Lab or the Policy Initiative. So now what's nice years later is that I really can work on both equally. I still work on a lot of commercial projects, but I also have a lot of clients which come from my field of interest.
And would you say that the key turning point in your career was the Beirut Madinati project, or a much earlier one?
No, I would say, in fact, it came before, but I would say it was more when it came to branding projects. So what happened is that when I first co-founded the Kite, I wasn't really sure that I wanted to work in branding, but I really believed in this idea of creating identities that are genuine and that really relate the essence of a certain practice. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had this dilemma at first, like, what do brands do? Or am I really going to work in the commercial world to promote big gurus and so on? So of course, between the theory and the practice and so on. So I decided that the best way to go about it, and it was kind of also genuine from my end, it's not that it was pre-planned, is to really start from this core, which is called the strategy. So the strategy and the research as the core of my work. And I come from a place where I'm a very rational person, but at the same time, going into the design field, or what we call the creative field, even though I would argue that the creative field is quite rational. This is one of.
I was about to.
This is yes. So, but I mean, this is a bit a motto I live with, because I kind of mix between both. So I said, okay, fine. If I really believe that research and strategy is at the core of developing any design work, so that's going to be the differentiation in my work. So I was really someone who believed that sketching, and I still do, that sketching, researching, looking at the competition, looking at the viability of a certain product, so or an idea, is really essential if we want to design more and create more things. So when I used to have clients who used to come with me, I used to challenge them with this idea. So they used to come quite excited. Okay, I want to open another restaurant. And I used to ask the question, do we need to open another restaurant? Do you need to create, is there relevance for what you're creating? And this challenge and this conversation and these discussions, in a way, became what it at the beginning there was some resistance because clients did not want to pay money to do research, so they wanted to see things. But then it became, and from a person to another, word of mouth, this process became attractive in a way. So more clients were coming to us because we were doing this kind of essential work, which takes some time. So it
Which
takes a month and a
clarified
half.
their own idea, which also clarified
Exactly.
their own idea. I think you helped them a lot. But how do you feel about working from Montreal? I mean, where are the notions of context and culture? And do you feel detached now, or are you just at a breathing distance that gives you some perspective, for example?
I mean, it has, moving to Montreal was a big decision, but it came, of course, because of the situation in Lebanon and so on, and mainly, primarily, not only as an individual, it's mainly because I have children and I wanted to, the move was best for them. So at the beginning, I was a bit scared. So how will I actually continue doing what I'm doing and being out there? But then it turned out that I feel that I'm just physically somewhere else. I still, most of my projects are based in Lebanon or the region. So I very much feel that this distance, perhaps as you're suggesting, is giving me a kind of peace of mind to be able to reflect even better on the projects I'm working on. The time difference is problematic, but helps at once because as well you have your whole afternoons to really be thinking. So in the morning you meet with a lot of people, you have those conversations with a very fresh mind. Sometimes it's 7 a.m, sometimes like now, so it's. This is helping me in a way. Now, of course, I do re-question a lot of times, and I say, okay, but can I keep on doing it from a distance? I need to, perhaps go back, be on the ground. But for now, since it's a decision I've made and I'm still working, I mean, all the designers, the team I work with are still not only based in Lebanon, now they're scattered a bit around the world because of, unfortunately, this idea that we're spreading more and more. But taking the best out of it and saying that, okay, fine, I'm here. Let's make use of this to kind of have some clarity to hopefully be able to go back and also be physically present.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you, what is the project you are most proud of that you did, or that you most enjoyed doing, or the most you got recognition for? So I'm not sure if there are 3 different projects or they are one, because they all get you that recognition or that enjoyment or that pride.
In fact, I think they're more than one, because the ones that got me recognition, um, I mean, yeah, there's 2 types of projects that got me recognition, but it's not just one. It's a little mixture, like I was saying. So on the commercial. There are some projects which somehow became quite popular because they were present at reach of customers. So I'll give an example. When we worked on the rebranding of Goodies, which is a delicatessen store based in Beirut. So even though as a process, each one of those initiatives, particularly when they're client based, they all have stories which in our minds are very much fun, and they're not always nice stories within the processes, because ideally the commercial processes for most of them wish the projects would, when their projects are completed, a lot of times they're not exactly the way we want it because there are constraints, there are challenges. So in the case of Goodies, for example, we were not able to really uplift the logo as we wanted to, because the client wanted to retain the logo. So we had a lot of constraints when it came to the shape of packages. So we were not at liberty to change the shape of the bottle or the jar. So we were kind of covering up. So it was a simple labeling system and with kind of almost manual interventions on the packages. So of course, in my eyes, it's not, and as a team, it's not like the project that we feel that was optimized as we wish to actually present it. But the fact that we relayed this idea of traditional, it was 100 years old brand the year we worked on it. So the fact that we were able to retain the essence of the brand and to really design something which was addressing potentially new audiences, but as well kept at ease the management, which were really grandparents and that were really attached to the core and that's why we went for watercolors. We went for something which would really be which will really keep them at ease and feel they were still comfortable about the change. Yeah. So this for us was a kind of pleasure in terms of strategy and approach, but as well we got recognition because it was there. You find it at the duty free, so everyone had a package. Sometimes even when I'm here in Montreal, I receive a pack of Za'atar thyme, and it has the package on it, so I keep the package, so it reminds me of home and of this process. But again, on the other end, since we talked about Beirut Madinati, the campaign, of course, it was a project that got a lot of recognition. And I was invited together with other designers to speak about it, be it in Beirut or in other countries where we're invited to talk about this campaign. What was most interesting about this campaign is discovering a new way of work. We were really a big group of designers. Some of us had already worked together and some of us never. And we were bringing ideas to the table. There was so much excitement happening, and it was really a wonderful collaborative initiative that got me to meet and work with a lot of designers I still collaborate with.
It involves much more than designing a poster. I mean, the conversations that happen, the strategies that happen, everything before doing that final poster is much more enjoyable, I would imagine.
Exactly, and you see, and you get a chance to live the vibes of the project while it's unfolding. So you see the reactions and how it became contagious. So we suddenly started having different artists, designers, product designers, fashion designers starting to collaborate within the project. And by creating new visuals and new slogans that we started borrowing and using again. So the process was really wonderful.
And if you stop at some point and think, what is the project that you would dream of, like something you want to get your hands on and you want to design, what would it be?
I think it would be within that same realm. So working on, let's say, a policy or working on advocating a cause and really seeing how working on a campaign that would actually change the face of things. So that would really be, I think, fulfilling as
What is it about your work that you find most difficult? Is it explaining what you do or actually doing it, or?
I guess explaining is kind of difficult still, even though I thought that with time, graphic design would become, more widespread. So you would say to someone, I'm a graphic designer, and then everyone would understand. So I find that we still reduce it in order to explain it. And a lot of times, even with adults, you have to do it the same way you would do it with children. So, like with my kids, they still don't understand what I do. And I say, okay, so I design logos. And they're like, oh, so you did that? And they're pointing at the sign. And I'm like, yes, so, and sometimes you find yourself with adults even saying this. So I design books, logos, posters, and I feel that this is very much reductive, because this whole idea of the design thinking processes, the notion of communication, the fact that you can address any type of projects with those design thinking processes is something that's difficult to relay. I think that's still the biggest challenge, and even not only the idea of how do we communicate it, but still, even though I feel much more comfortable today communicating this to potential clients or to colleagues or students, I feel it still needs a lot of consolidation in terms of what are the outcomes of this process, and can we just forget about the outcomes and try to really word it in a way that becomes accessible to a wider audience. I guess this is the main challenge that I find in our profession.
Yeah, that's the greater relevance of our role, I think. I think what is important about what we do as visual communicators and designers. So how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered not through a particular project, or I think it's mainly about approach, and mainly about perhaps teaching. I mean, I've been an educator for quite some time, and not only in the classroom, but as well in my office environment, where I'm really keen on really at all times teaching or relaying certain ideas or discussing or really having debates about those ideas that we're discussing. And I think this allows me personally to grow, and hopefully the designers that work with me or the students that have learned from me. So perhaps I'd like to be remembered there. Hopefully.
And I think your clients too would remember that, because I think you play a very important role in educating your clients too.
True, yeah, perhaps. I mean, I think that's the idea of perhaps growing myself and within this industry. Like my contribution could be where it's about really trying to educate, or at least have the conversation about where we can head from here, or how we can develop the practice.
And what do you imagine will be important in design in the coming 10, let's say 20 years? What would we be doing?
I think the challenge again in design is to come up with concepts or ideas or work on projects which will somehow allow for a potential change, or to not a change in themselves, but to be in sync with the changes that are happening in the world. So I think it's very much important that we try not to repeat ourselves in what we're doing. I'm not saying to be inventors or to create new concepts and so on, but to really be relevant to the world and what's happening today. So is it that we're going or we're moving into technology and we have to adapt there? Is it that we have too many objects and commodities which are perhaps unnecessary, and perhaps we shouldn't be encouraged to create more, but create more relevance or more functionalities, or perhaps look at these needs? Is it really to look at social concerns and address them? Is it I don't know. There's so many things, but I guess that eventually it's to evolve.
Yeah.
To evolve within the practice. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have imagined you talking about AI and the role it's playing now in what we're doing, but I love your answers. More questions.
Okay.
And maybe we can end with a personal note, Maya, here. What do you do in your leisure time? Do you have any leisure time?
I don't have much leisure time, but I try to spend a lot of it. I mean, of course, I do have weekend. I don't take much vacation. So I try to spend this time with my children. So mostly on weekends, a lot of outdoors. I'm not going to say hikes because that would be an overstatement. Just enjoying nature, parks, chilling out, picnics, and so on, or small
Museums?
trips. Museums, yeah, as well, but eventually, would we define this as leisure? Just because we were having this conversation a while back. So, yeah, as well. And then, yeah, that's mainly it. And I mean, I also watch a lot of movies. I think that's,
What is the latest movie you watched?
I guess it's a series more lately.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I watched. Now I'm out of episodes, but I watched two very nice series lately: The White Lotus,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is called Severance. Both of them are quite different, but very interesting.
We'll check them out. And
Mhm.
any final words of advice you'd like to tell our listeners?
I'll go back a bit to the beginning of my conversation, and my advice perhaps would be that even when you're unsure about a particular where to position yourself, if you're lost in practice, so I'm mainly talking to designers, so uh, because I mentioned a lot during the conversation about this idea of, oh, I'm a rational person, but then I'm a designer, or this idea of bringing together the strategic aspect, the creativity, or bridging between the commercial and engaged citizen kind of roles of designers. So perhaps my advice would be, and it's an advice I always give to myself, is not to ask too many questions, but to work, enjoy your practice, and the answer would actually come along. So not to try to label
Mm.
those different parts of the field, but perhaps it's all about them combined, or perhaps none at all. So just enjoy it as you go.
Brilliant advice, I think. Brilliant.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Maya. You are so inspiring. Thank you so,
Thank you
so
so
much
much, Yara.
for giving us your time. Thank you.